All right, all right, all right. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Imuna, and you don't know already. I play Everybody is Doing Well. Listener, yesterday we were over here reading Tyrese's mama's book, Miss Priscilla, right? And something came across my plate, and I tried to focus, but I said, you know what? Let me come back and have this conversation because when I awoke this morning, there was a comment. So I know I'm a little bit earlier than I usually am, but I needed to get this off really quickly because today is Friday and I'm not going to be able to do it later. So the comment said, breastfeeding was what 99%. I love when I see that statistics, especially after retaking statistic class, because that percentage, that margin of error is low on that. 99%, that is really high, okay? Of what mothers did back in the day once they were well and had milk. It's only the modern woman who thought the female breast belonged to the men during their activities, right? For the sake of those who may be watching. I'm like, what? Why we be making up history? Understand what I'm saying? Why we be over here remixing the reality? So today's quick conversation, I say quick, that's all relative, is going to be about the history of breastfeeding versus formula feeding. Because thanks for the person who commented, but it's the woman's fault who one day decided that she was going to get up and reassign the value or the functionality of the breast. That doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't sound like that's how it went. So you know me, I went about looking, and because I've studied in this area briefly in other times. So that's what we're going to go into right now. Breastfed versus formula fed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think it's up to the individual choice of the mother and it's nobody else's business but her and the baby? Do you think that the male, the father, the husband, the boyfriend should have a say in as to whether or not the mother breastfeeds? Is that his breast? Is that his milk? Because what the commenter is saying is that it was the woman who decided that her breast was for the man. And I'm here like, I don't necessarily agree with that. But as always, we're going to substantiate some of this. And let me read a little bit about what Miss Priscilla said, because she was 15 years old at the time she gave birth. And what she said was, let's put it here, what she said. What she said was, I asked one of the nurses to show me how to put the cloth diaper on my baby and how I was supposed to make baby formula. Let me know if I could be heard because I'm going in already and I didn't double check if I could be heard. Good day, Kim. Welcome to the conversation. Let me know if I could be heard loud and clear, loud and clear. And to be honest, I wanted to kind of take a little detour yesterday, but now we're here, right? Now we are here. Hold on one second. And to be honest, yep, we're here. To kind of take a little detour yesterday. So the commenter was like, it's the woman. It's the woman. Thank you so much. The woman decided that she didn't want to use her breast to feed her baby. That woman. It says, she goes on to say that she and how she was supposed to make baby formula because she didn't want to breastfeed. So at 15 years old, this young girl didn't want to breastfeed. Breastfeeding wasn't even considered. It wasn't a consideration because, so she doesn't even say it wasn't a consideration. She tells you why. That's kind of how I like the way she kind of illustrates her point. She tells you something and then she tells you what she was thinking, because she thought it would make her feel weird. Okay. So when I heard that, I wanted to go into it because breastfeeding has, unfortunately, in today's time, it has become politicized. Where can you feed your baby? Can you feed your baby in a restaurant? Do you have to go in the back room? Do you have to go in the bathroom? It is cultural. It has been, it is medical, quote unquote, because it was being challenged medically at one time in history. And I'm confused, or maybe we can then substantiate whether or not it's 99% of the women, even back in the day. I don't know what exact time period is back in the day. Was it the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, the 1900s? I don't know. This 15-year-old girl was in 1970, early 70s. Early 70s. So exactly. So we're looking at this 15-year-old girl in the early 70s with a certain mindset. And so that's why I said, at what point was back in the days? Was it early 1900s? Was it 1800s? These are the type of things it's important to kind of flesh out when we, get to that 99% statistic that was thrown out. Hey, India, long time no see. I don't think women said breast is for the men or that men had a say in breastfeeding, but there is disparaging saying that breastfeeding makes your breast sag and hence you become unattractive to your mate. And I have heard that as well, right? So I agree with India in the sense that I don't think the woman just got up one day and was like, you know what, kid, you're on your own. You know what I mean? Kick rocks. This again, culturally, there are some things that have changed along the time. So I have some goodies here that I'm going to share to show at different time periods what was happening as it relates to this whole conversation of breastfeeding, right? So much like we saw that doctors in the medical industry had women, uh, flushing their innards with Lysol. Okay. We had similar things going on with the medical industry and breastfeeding, right? So we have some pictures that they were marketing to women, okay? And, the greater community at large about what was vogue. Remember, if I'm not mistaken, I said that yesterday about what you have to go back to the time because she's being informed by TV and advertisements. See, Kim says she grew up in the 70s and not many women were breastfeeding. That would be like, okay, this was the observation. And the next question I would ask is, why? You understand what I'm saying? What was going on at that time that so many women would deviate from breastfeeding? Now, an overview is that there was a turn in the expectation of the woman around, and again, breastfeeding and formula, the convergence of the where formula increased and the popularity of formula increased, the desire to breastfeed decreased. So historically, around mid 1900s, when there was World War II, they needed the women to, the government did, go into workspaces because the men were not here. Okay. So they had to convince these mothers who before this, in many spaces, not all, were at home and had certain quote unquote luxuries. She now had to be able to come into the workspace, right? And make sure that her primary responsibilities as a mother were met, right? So let me share my screen here. Oh, yes. All right, boom. So this is one of the things I came across. Again, anytime you see a mass exodus or a change in thought process and philosophy, look towards capitalism, look towards the economy, look towards the marketing, because chances are people didn't just get up one day. Women didn't. Now, what they say today, people assigned at birth as female, some stuff like that I'm hearing, didn't just get up one day and be like, like I said, kid, you're on your own. So we see advertisements starting to pop up, right? Wet nurses were a thing. This is what the article is saying earlier. We even see the wet nurse conversation when it comes on to Egypt. We see it where in the Bible it talks of Miriam, Moses' sister, being told by Pharaoh's daughter to go and get a wet nurse. I think I did such a video like this a very long time ago here, but a wet nurse was actually a profession. And this is why in the storyline, Moses' mother gets paid because wet nurses hired out their services for whatever reason that the mother could not feed or did not feed, or the child was adopted or whatever the case may be, then a wet nurse will come in and substitute and make sure that the child is nourished until they can get to that point. So wet nursing was a common practice before the introduction of the feeding bottle and formula. It began as early as 2000 BC and extended to the 20th century. If a wet nurse could not procure a child was a subject to starvation and malnutrition, being fed animal milk through dry nursing. Lack of human milk literally meant life or death to infants up until the early 1800s. So this wasn't like, oh, it's in vogue. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Okay. Colonialism, capitalism, all of the isms. Okay. All of the isms is going to come into this storyline. So let's continue. Let us continue. So 1845 to 1846, the invention of the rubber nipple. So I actually looked it up. You can still see the patent on the rubber nipple. You still see the patent right now online. So you could definitely look it up. So they were using clay vessels, oblong vessels, things of that nature early on, because sometimes in antiquity, a lot of times the mother may have not made it through, and it was very practical. It's like the history of the C-section. And when you look up the history of the C-section, it was the practicality of getting the baby. The mother passed in birth, and then they had to deliver the baby for the chances of the baby still staying alive, right? So the mother may have had a difficult birth, and then they tried to rescue the baby. So usually, from what my research, the initial C-section, only one person came out alive. Okay. Now it has become something else, but that was the origins of it. Much like the origins of making sure that the child was fed comes from something that happened that prevented the mother from giving milk. And so the next best thing was to get a woman who was lactating to give milk. Okay. Elijah Pratt invented the India rubber nipple. Let me just get up Elijah Pratt little something here so that we can see that clearly this was something on the minds of the people. Okay. Because what was Elijah Pratt doing in the lab talking about what me I go do? Me need to come up with an invention, man. Me I go come up with a baby buckle nipple. Like something had to be going on in and around the conversation for Elijah Pratt to want to come up with this baby bottle nipple. So y'all know I like the holistic learning experience. So I'm gonna let go of my screen for 2 seconds and then pull up Elijah Pratt's little design here, because now they don't even have Babies R Us anymore, but now you go into all of these, or you go on Amazon, whatever, and then you'll see all of these different types. But this was the first, quote, rubber nipple prototype. Let me make it bigger here. And here it is. See that? US 4131A. Still, the grant it was August the 4th, 1845. And it expired August the 4th, 1862. And basically it's expired, but here is the patent. So what a lot of Europeans, colonizers, did, they created the patent office, and then they went and patent things. So when we see, so that they can have sole access to an idea or the rights over something, like like the cotton gin and all those other things, so that they can monetize it. Okay, so here is 1845 patent, August the 4th, and this is the patent right here. You have to draw out, and today you can still come up. We still need inventors. You can still come up with stuff. The process is still there. You get it sketched out, you submit it, you see if anything like it is on the market, and then you hold the patent. You hold a different type of patent to make sure. But in this day of knockoff, then you have to go to court or whatever. But this is the original one right here. Cool. And then his name right there. So let's go back. I thought that was cool. So let's go back here to reading this quick little article. So we just saw Elijah Pratt. When orphaned newborns, we just spoke about that, were effortlessly achieving a latch on these new rubber nipples that truly simulated a mother's breast, the problem of getting food into a motherless child was solved. Now attention quickly shifted to the problem of finding a food or dry nursing that didn't result in so many deaths. So from this time, again, the mother could have never made it. That was the majority of the reason that they were looking for something to be able to substitute the mother's milk. Because the child naturally is born, unless something else is going on, with a sucking reflex, and this is how they stay alive. As early as 1846, Scientists, remember I talk about commercialism, the medical industry. Remember, it's still enslavement. 1865 in America is the Civil War time, right? So it's in 1846, there's still enslavement. So 9 times out of 10, the wet nurses is going to be melanated bodies. You get me? But now we have scientists and nutritionists making this a medical problem, seeking to lower infant mortality associated with dry nursing. Dry nursing is them trying to find out, quote unquote, baby formulas, things that they can put together to feed this child so this child could stay alive. It's very different than having the mother right there and be like, nah, your breast don't do what it's supposed to do. Let me go ahead and give this child this, quote, dry nursing. So did the mother just jump up one day and be like, no titty for you, kid? I don't know. So here's one of the old school adverts. Here's the little dry nursing situation here. And they even, le trecer de what is this? Mamanas. Okay. Look at the little kid. All right. 1867 to 1888. Infant formula is invented. With the advent of infant formula, we have the decrease of breastfeeding. Kim says, I'm not sure. I had one aunt that still breastfed in the 70s, and we kids looked at her like she had two heads, two-headed dragon. We were not taught that it was the natural thing to do. Exactly, because at this time, remember, we're looking at by 1870s. That means 100 years later, formula had already been invented, and it is a cash cow. It is money making. So therefore, and you don't necessarily have to be there. Anybody can do it. So it's convenient. You understand? But let's continue. Let me close this little patent thing. Let's go over here. We shot with that now. So Justice and Liebig developed the world's first commercial infant formula. Liebig's soluble food for babies. So men, just like Justice von Liebig sounds like a dude to me. Let me look up Justice von Liebig, just in case somebody has said, no, Mona, him name Justina, and he's a woman come up with this thing. A wicked, wicked woman. I'm being sarcastic. Yeah, let me look up Justice von Liebig really quickly. Backside, could Justice. Let me share Justice really quickly. All right. Just in case anybody wants to say, is the woman take away the titty from the pitney and cause the pitney because she didn't want to get the man. See the man. See Justice Van Liebig, yes, sir. See him? He's very much a European male. Okay? See him there? Cool. All right, let's continue. Let us continue. All right. So, Mr. Van Liebig now developed the world's first commercial infant formula for babies, right? Which was manufactured and sold in London by Liebig's registered concentrated milk company. I tell you, capitalism, commercialism, as India said, colonialism, all of this, it wasn't necessarily for the benefit, although it would say, for the percentage of babies who didn't have access. But once money come in at this, the thing goes left really quickly. Even if you did it for a right reason, it get left really quickly. So it says Liebig did not challenge the obvious fact that mother's milk was the perfect infant food. So, but now today it has kind of changed. Like the formula is better than the mother, although it's kind of trying to find its balance. But he did claim that he had succeeded in concocting, right word, a substance whose chemical makeup was, quote, no, you're the madness now, virtually identical to that of mother's milk. A lot of things we find ourselves in a problem is because man is trying to play God. I'm just going to keep it. I'm just going to give my humble observation. When man tried to play the divine intellect, we find ourselves in problem. And initially, it always seems good. Like when they was putting cocaine in Coca-Cola, it sounded good at the time. You understand what I'm saying? It made your headache go away. But now you a crackhead. Your mama is in there drinking Coke in Coca-Cola and she's addicted. You understand? It sounded good at the time. The uncle can't stop going to the local soda fountain. It sounded good at the time. Sayers and Roebuck selling heroin in a pack. It sounded good at the time. But then when they realized that, oops, maybe children shouldn't be given opioids, it sounded good at the time. Let's continue. So Holmesy, Mr. Von Liebig, or Liebig, or whatever I want him, he was over there like, he was over there like, bruh, I came up with the best thing since sliced bread. This thing is virtually identical to that of mother's milk. How, when mother's milk changes, it changes upon what she eats. It changes upon what the baby needs. Sometimes it's more fat. Sometimes it's more water. Sometimes mother's milk is not one stagnant thing. Mother's milk, the makeup of the mother's milk adjusts to the needs of the child. But okay. The success of this product quickly gave rise to competitors, Sitya, such as Mellon's infant food, Ridge's food for infants, and Nestle's milk. Remember I said Nestle, they are still to this day, you know. Let me see how much Nestle make a year. Nestle's baby formula. Hold on. I don't even want to go into what Nestle's. Let me see. It says the retail value of baby formula market worldwide. This is worldwide. Worldwide. So you took something that if you fed the child, right? If you fed the mother, the child would eat, right? If you fed the mother, the child would eat. But they're like, we could feed the mother and the child. It's a 2-for-1, increase the bottom line. So there has been a retail market for baby formula. In the last 10 years, it has gone up to 65 billion US dollars. That's for the world market of all the different formulas. Yes, $65 billion. Let's continue. Just us, come off of my screen for me, please. All right. So, wow. Let's continue. But I see that Nestle dropped because they had over 212,000 infant deaths per year among mothers. What is that? The deadly toll of marketing infant formula in low and middle income countries. So Nestle took a hit because it says a careful examination of Nestle marketing behavior shows that entry level into low and middle income formula markets caused 212,000 infant deaths per year among mothers without clean water access at the peak of the Nestle controversy in 1981. So Nestle said every formula for everybody, take away breast from everybody. So does this sound like the mothers just jumped up and was like, we don't want formula? Or is this big behemoth of a company coming into local areas and advertising to them the benefits of giving the child formula? And of course, one would think you need clean. So for the person who gave the statistic, here is the actual statistic. Let me share that, and I'm gonna continue reading. Here's the actual statistic, according to. Hold on. We can't just make up statistics, y'all. Although some people do. This says here, decline in the percentage, breastfeeding with formula introduction. This is what I spoke to, right? So here we have the percentage of the breastfeeding on the y-axis, and then we have the places on the x-axis. So the decline, let me see here, before Nestle and after. So the blue is before. So in Chile, just for example, before Nestle came into their spot, formula was at 10%. After they came in 1960, it was at 90%. So who is changing the narrative? Who is pushing the needle? Nestle came into China. In 1950, it shot up to 90% of breastfeeding people began. Am I correct? Before Nestle. No, sorry. Before Nestle, my apologies. Before Nestle, 90% were breastfeeding. After Nestle, only 30% was breastfeeding. So correction. Before Nestle in Chile, 90% were breastfeeding, and after only 10%. Singapore, it's less than 10%. Mexico, we see it the closest it is. Singapore is the greatest difference. Taiwan, we see just in a less than 20-year, 14-year span, you had 90% of people, women breastfeeding, and it dropped down to 50% in less than 14 years. Okay. So this is illustrating the introduction that quickly of this formula into the public. Okay. And mothers being less inclined to breastfeed their children. They are connected. Let's continue here. Let's see. It says here. I know y'all people probably was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna talking about breastfeeding and titties for men." It's a little bit more than that. It's a little bit more than that. Okay, the success of the product, boom, 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 jump down. By 1883, here comes the money pot. There were 27 patent brands of infant food on the market. So is this about the wellness of the baby? Because the breastfeeding is not only for the wellness of the baby, it's also for the wellness of the mother. That's how nature was designed. All mammalians do it. But somehow, someway, when we get to people, the thing kind of gets a little wonky. All right. It goes on a little. However, formula was still rightly seen as an emergency food for babies that would otherwise starve. That would make sense if it stayed like that, right? It says the foods were fattening but lacked valuable nutrition like protein, vitamin, and minerals, as stated in Boston Globe, April 11th, 1880. Quote, the duty of every mother, and especially those who are charged with the delicate and great responsibility of rearing hand-fed children, is to investigate the merits of the best artificial food in the case of preservation of infant life. So, humans have a way. We start off with a good sentiment and end up on the other side of the tracks. So this is an old article. Look, they have little babies. Somebody sat and drew this. Little babies dancing around the nutrition, uh, the nutrition Nestle food supplement with a stork. Because remember, they lied and told people, ring around a Nestle. That's what the thing says. Ring, I'm done. So once that she said, we had money can make, hey. And this that we if we get them on this every day now, over the last 100 years, has this had long-reaching implications? Yes, it probably preserved many lives, right? But it also compromised the long-term quality of life and health of a lot of people that develop issues later on based on what their systems were exposed to as children or even babies. Nestle food for happy babies. Nestle babies have rosy cheeks, bright eyes, and the brain, brawn, and sinew to develop the helpful men and women of the future. Bro, so what are you saying? The road to destruction is paved with good intentions, isn't it? I like to see where the stuff starts at, so we can all have an informed conversation. It's easy to be like, oh, it's the women. They just got up one day and decided that they weren't going to breastfeed their children. Is it? Because so far it looks like there's a lot of masculine energy. Once again, I'm not saying the males and females, masculine and feminine energy has a place. And when one enters into a space that's not necessarily a shared space, her body was equipped to nourish. Her body was designed to do what it's supposed to do. He in this space is supportive. But when the masculine took over and exploited it for profit, it became a problem. What he was supposed to be doing is making sure that your crops didn't fail, making sure that she had the food that she needed to, that she would be fed and not hungry, that she would be healthy and not sick. So then her body can then produce what needs to be produced for the child. Instead, it's like, mother, move out the way. You understand? We ain't worried about that. We're going to come over here and make sure the child has what the child needs. 9/10, 9 out of 10 of the trouble with fretful, peevish infants can be directly traced to unsuitable food. Here you know. Let us send you free of charge. Okay, go to Hook. They sent you the little situation in the mail, the little something to hook you, right? Isn't that what drug dealers do? They give you a little something for you to get hooked, and then next thing you know, boop. So they say they listen to the old tactic. Let us send you free of charge, of course, a half-pound package of Nestle's food for trial and our book for mothers, quote unquote. So remember, I said earlier, the mother was being targeted. She was being marketed to. She was being Edward Bernays. You know what I'm saying? Mass communication. You know what I mean? Psychology, which is full of helpful hints for the care of babies and young children. Write a postcard today to Henry Nestle, 73 Warren Street, New York. So he's speaking directly to this company, is speaking directly to the pain points. That's how they market today, yeah? To the pain points of the mother, the concern of a new mother. It's the same thing we read about Priscilla. She was concerned. So these concerns of the new mother. Oh, is your child getting enough food? Is your child healthy? They address the rosy cheeks, bright eyes, and the brain and brawn and sinew to develop helpful men and women. No worries, trust us. That's what I'm getting. And guess what? We're gonna pull you in for free. 1890 to 1907. I'm not gonna read all of it, but we're getting the point so far. While infant formula did see a drastic decrease in infant mortality, medical experts still shared widespread agreement that it was not a guaranteed cure-all. Despite the claims of being, quote, virtually identical to mother's milk, many infants still died from undernourishment, scurvy, rickets, and bacterial infections. Because the immunity of the mother is supposed to pass to the baby. So if you feed and nourish, it's like the health of the earth is passed on to the crop. So you nourish the earth, you replenish the minerals in the earth, you make sure the earth has what it needs so that it can push up sustainable crops. So the fact that the children were still undernourished, scurvy, rickets, and bacteria, again, this was early on, but still, you're not realizing that you were a bit presumptuous in this whole virtually identical situation. As physicians became increasingly concerned about the quality of commercial formula and realized the formula was not sufficient to meet the digestive needs of infants, medical recommendations such as Thomas Morgan Roach's percentage method began to be distributed and gained widespread population by 1907. These complex formulas recommended that parents mix cow's milk, water, cream, and sugar or honey. And now they say don't give children honey, but when you don't know what you don't know, in specific ratios to achieve the nutritional balance to approximate human milk. These formulas were less expensive and widely believed, and that's the key word, the operative word, believed, to be healthier. Yeah, the headache is gone, but now they're a crackhead. It's crazy. It's there's a lot of things at one time. The authority is like, yes, man, and everybody jump on the bandwagon, and then it was like, did you take this drug? You may be eligible for a class action lawsuit. Like, when are we gonna learn? Like, history keeps repeating itself. However, even these formula-fed babies continue to exhibit diet-associated medical problems such as scurvy, rickets, and bacterial infections that breastfed babies did not cut. Look at the doctor, him. Look how him back there smile. Yes, man, they're going to give me a little kickback when you take this formula. You look on the baby. Mommy, where you over there, though? No doctor can recommend any better evaporated milk for infant feeding. See that? See? So they were marketing evaporated milk, White House evaporated milk at that time, to mothers who went and trusted this male figure in this very female space. How? How, Sway? How, Sway? How, Sway? So we moved away from our natural understanding and inclination, and the mother left her natural nurturing space and went into a space that maybe the male may not have been as equipped to deal with. And then let me write you this script real quick, sis. For what? White House evaporated milk. Ah, bless your name, most time. Okay. Let me make this bigger so I can see. Yo, why who's your doctor sound like who's your daddy? No, it says when your doctor, sorry, prescribed your baby's formula. So now this was something that at that time was being prescribed. That means it was going through the medical industry and being prescribed. Under what criteria? What was the criteria for the prescription? So by the 70s, this would have already been a part of the culture. The stigma on breastfeeding was already there. The women didn't just pop up one day and see the hungry baby and try get milk and be like, let go me baby. This, because it's the mother's, unless something else is going on, a natural inclination for the most part to want to nourish that child. The breast doesn't just provide food for a child, it provides connection for that child. It provides emotional stability for that child. So a lot of things are lost in the sauce when we think that the breast solely is for food or for the man and not the pitney, right? When your doctor prescribes your baby formula, remember this fact. No doctor can recommend any better evaporated milk than White House milk for infant feeding. Does this not sound like a money play? This is a money play. It's a money play. Doctors know that White House milk supplies each essential nutrient of fresh milk and that pure crystalline vitamin 3, D3, the precious, quote, sunshine vitamin, has been generously added for the development of sound bones and teeth. Moreover, White House milk is homogenized to make it easy for babies to digest and sterilized in its safe sealed can. These statements are accepted by the Council of Foods and Nutrition of the American Medical Association. You be patient while they practice. Truly, there is no better evaporated milk than White House for infant feeding, and no food authority can recommend any better evaporated milk for cooking, baking, coffee, and other beverages or for any milk need. So not only this is a multi-purpose milk, like baby, you hungry? Take this. But if me want to make some coffee, we can put it in there too. Okay. And again, we see the appeal to authority. We see the people, the women questioning their own capabilities because this ad is like, bro, we got you. And nobody else could do it better. And it literally says there is none better. Okay. So let's keep going a little bit here. So by the up to the 50s, evaporated milk in 1910 began to be widely commercially available at low prices. Convenient milk corporations fund clinical studies. Anytime somebody doing a study, it's important to know who funded the study because the findings are going to oftentimes be in favor of whoever gave you the money to go do the study in the first place. Conveniently, milk corporations funded clinical studies that suggested that babies fed evaporated milk formula thrive, quote, as well as breastfed babies. So we had this paid for study. You understand? Because we want to make the money. This is a claim that is simply not supported by modern research and for the time amounted to a giant money fueled lie. So in this case, masculine colonizing energy entered into a feminine space. This is a wholly feminine space. Exploited it for what? Gain. See that? My doctor said carnation. And 9 times out of 10, who was your doctor? Who was the doctor? See that? My doctor said carnation. So let me jump down here a little bit. So we see this is coming up through the decades. This is not just a one-time thing that happened. This is coming up. How to be a girl. So there's marketing campaigns, there's babies drinking out of bottles. And so this is in newspapers, this is in radio, this is on the TV. No doctor can recommend any better evaporated milk for infant feeding. Okay? Commercial formulas begin aggressive advertising campaign. Remember, in the story of Priscilla, she is coming from a certain demographic, right? She is impoverished. She's coming from an abusive household. They still do have TV and access to certain things. And this is a campaign, an aggressive campaign that is happening during the time that she would have been born and the time that she's growing up. So by this time, this mindset is heavily pervasive throughout the culture, the popular culture. In the 1950s, Alfred Bosworth released a reformulation and concentration of Similac for similar to lactation. I literally just learned something new today. I did not know that Similac was short for similar to lactation. I love learning. And Mead Johnson released Enfamil for infant meal. I did not know that. Look at life. Several other formulas were released over the next few decades, and long with extremely aggressive advertising campaigns, extremely aggressive. With exaggerated claims of health benefits and complete nutrition, commercial formulas began to seriously compete with evaporated milk. So at this time, breastfeeding, we saw when Nestle just entered into foreign countries, right? I'm sure if I looked, I could see the same chart for America. So the decline in breastfeeding was not solely cultural happenstance. This was through extensive marketing and a desire to capture market share. And it was coming from medical industry, it is coming from formula producers, it is coming from popular culture. Come on. Several other formulas were released over the next few decades, and along with extremely aggressive advertising campaigns. I already read that. The overall popularity of formula began to soar in a social climate that increasingly viewed breastfeeding as dirty and unclean. I wonder where that thought came from. Who would have convinced these women that breastfeeding was dirty and unclean? Where would they get such a thought from? That breastfeeding was dirty and unclean. Who, pray tell, who would have profited from spreading such slanderous lies? Dirty, dirty little lies. Let's continue. I hope they give a reference for on the bottom because I would like to know where that was coming from. In 1959, marketing campaigns provided inexpensive formula to hospitals and pediatricians for endorsement. And by the early 1960s, commercial formulas were more commonly used than evaporated milk formulas in the United States, which all but vanished in the 1970s. So what did this young woman say when she was 15 in the early 1970s? She asked the nurse, because these formulas were in the hospitals. So she asked the nurse, and it's still there today. You have a baby, they over here trying to give you a free formula so that you can introduce your baby from a very young to be this now client. Like the minute your baby is coming out the womb, your baby is marketed to via you. When milk's on the house, it must be the best. See, baby, just a come out, boom, call customer right away. Put the milk in their mouth. Now, here's a statistic because we were told that 99% of the women back in the day, I don't know when that was, breastfed. But by the early 1970s, over 75% of American babies were fed on formula, almost entirely commercially produced. So this would have been almost a good 100 years of the introduction and the change and acceptance of commercially made synthetic formulas in place of breastfeeding. When birth rates in industrial nations tapered off during the 70s, infant formula companies heightened marketing campaigns in non industrial companies. And we literally just saw those stats. We just saw those stats. You know what I find interesting? We like to, when we have discussion, we like to assert certain things, but then when we have to get like factual information about the things that we asserted, it's like, I don't, just give it to me. You know what I mean? But in order to get it, we have to be willing to go through this information so that we will be informed, and not just like red herring every conversation that we have based on what we think or what we heard somebody say somewhere, right? And we can be historically accurate. But let me continue. When birth rates in industrial nations, I read that. Unfortunately, poor sanitation led to steeply increasing mortality rates among infant fed formula prepared with contaminated water. And you did see that I went to that stat, and that was on voxdex.org. I'll put that in the box as well. The deadly toll of entering these markets without full preparation and, not having access to clean drinking water. I'll put this article in the box as well. What's interesting now is that the tide is turning, and now hospitals, there has been given millions of dollars within the last decade to give hospitals the funds that they need to promote breastfeeding again, to reintroduce breastfeeding into the population, because they're realizing that not being breastfed has far-reaching effects beyond what they had considered 100 years ago. And so now if you look it up, you will see lactation consultants, you will see health education specialists, you will see certain systems, healthy start systems, going into these places to help new mothers and existing mothers understand the benefits of breastfeeding their children, and offering them supportive services through the process. Very curious. So I'm not going to just say it just went one way. The pendulum is swinging back. It says, additionally, third world women using formula would lose their natural milk supply from lack of nursing, and then would resort to adding 3 times the amount of recommended water to formula to try and stretch the food for their children, resulting in mass death from nutrition. Because of course, with breast milk, if you don't use it, you will lose it, right? And so they're feeding the child with the formula, so the child is not nursing enough, so the milk supply begins to reduce. This is stuff that why they need lactation and health educators, because if you don't know this stuff, you won't understand what's happening. It says here, UNICEF estimates that a formula-fed child living in disease-ridden and unhygienic conditions is 25 times more likely to die of diarrhea and 4 times more likely of pneumonia than a breastfed child. 1.2 million deaths. That is very interesting that the initial desire was to reduce deaths on one side in the early 1800s. And now there's an estimated 1.2 million deaths directly related to formula feeding in third world countries. And the most popular among them was Nestle, of which they call for a boycott for unethical marketing practices. Onokoya. So this emergency supplement was being peddled as a healthy food choice, resulting in forming of the International Code of Marketing and Breastfood Feeding Substitutes. Look, I didn't even know about this boycott. Profits are up, so is infant malnutrition. Boycott Nestle. This was in the 80s. And there's more, but I kind of wanted to touch on that today, because the thought process, sometimes we like to just think it is somebody just got up one day and decided, you know what, they don't want to feed their child. It may be the case today, but they don't understand how their grandmothers or great grandmothers arrived at this thought process, right? They arrived at it because it was coming from somewhere else. There's something I wanted to read here really quickly. Let me read this a little bit. Marketing by association with health professionals established an unjustified belief in the complete safety and efficacy of infant formula feeding. The change to formula fed feeding as the norm was led by the advantaged Western woman, listen good, who trusted doctors and hospitals to know what was best for their babies. So it still led back to the industrial complex, the capitalistic nature of what was happening. That, and it wasn't because one day there's like, I don't trust me, I trust you. There was a constant campaign, even when you look at the canceling campaign to remove midwives from the primary source of delivering children. And they also told the mothers that midwives are dirty and nasty and the reason why your baby was dying. So you should come to the hospital that's clean and sanitary. That there was a literal campaign. There's actually a book. There's actually a book that talks about the persecution of midwives in the early 1900s. So I say that to say the Western women began to trust the doctors and hospitals to know what was best for their babies. And by the 1970s, that same demographic would lead the drive back to mother feeding. But in the cultural context, that increases required physical separation of mother and child for long periods in the day. So that's what I was talking about also, that it's not only just feeding the child, it's also that connection that helps foster healthy attachment styles, right? I'll just leave this in a box. I'm not going to read the entire thing. I think I've kind of spoke to what I wanted to address, that it wasn't just the woman saying, oh no, her breast is for the man. It was a whole effort on many fronts that had a lot to do with money as to why the woman was not encouraged to breastfeed at a certain space in time. Any questions or comments, feel free to share at this time. Let me put this in the box here. And so that's kind of what, because as we was reading yesterday, I knew that it wasn't just her thought coming out of the blue, right? It was stigma. There was a stigma attached to breastfeeding. And today, even though it's lessening, there's still a bit of a stigma attached to breastfeeding, which I think is curious, but okay. So I put the link in the box. Let me see if I missed any questions or comments before I boogie. India says the purpose of marketing is to make consumption ethical, but there is no ethical consumption of the capitalism. Ain't it true? They marketed, right? They wanted to make it seem as though, and anytime, it's just like the Lysol thing we saw. It's the doctors being used as puppets to try to sway the understanding of the population that this is not harmful. There is a documentary on Netflix. What's the name of it? That talks about the opioid crisis and the addiction to opioids. There's a few of them actually. One of them, I can't remember the name I watched, when it talked about the pharmaceutical industry, marketing much like this formula, but the opioids to people and realizing, even what was Oxycontin is what they were exploring, and that how addictive this became and how it began to ruin a lot of people's lives when they couldn't kick the habit, when they became addicted. And so much of that is even still happening today. How many people across the United States are addicted to prescribed pharmaceuticals? Addicted. We see the case of Kanye West, where they're saying that he did some dental work and now he's addicted to, layman's terms, laughing gas. I saw that the other day, right? So people go to these places for medical procedures and they get addicted to pain medicine, would have morphine and all type of things in there. They get addicted to all of these things. So the first pusher, much like this formula, is come and ask your doctor, and I'm gonna give you a script real quick. So when medicine is in such when it's too interwoven with monetary gain, it becomes a problem. Because as India is saying, that the efficacy of things are lost along the way. And now it's no longer about the overall health and wellness of the individual, it is about money. Now, I'll ask one more question before I go. I was taking this class and I read something and it stayed with me. What is the number one industry in America? Now, this was according to, I have to get the source on this, but what is the number one industry in America? Can anybody guess the number one industry in America? Let me see if I can pull it up. Hold on one second. Well, now I have to stand corrected. As of 2023, it is the third largest industry in America. Hold on. Because when I wrote that, maybe that book was dated. So as of 2023, it's the third largest industry in America. And so the third largest, ready for this? Let me pull it up. The third largest. India said, I don't know. Don't worry. I'm about to bring it right now. I'm about to bring it right now. Because this puts things into perspective. I'm going to go look after I come off for the first and second because I'll be curious to know. Because when I read it, it said it was the first, but that may have been dated. So let me go ahead and share my screen. It says here, 28 astonishing U.S. healthcare industry statistics. The U.S. healthcare industry is the third largest industry in the country. The third largest. At first, when I read it, like I said, it said the first. Now they're saying as of 2023, it is the third largest. The spending is 18.3% of the U.S. economy. 18.3% of the U.S. economy. 4.3 trillion. When you keep hearing healthcare, it's because it's an industry. You'll know that when you go to the hospital or the doctor, they'll charge you $20 for a Q-tip, $50 for a swab of peroxide, $30 for a Band-Aid. It is 4.3 trillion in revenue. I'm sorry. In revenue is business, isn't it? Revenue is business. So this is in line with what we're talking about. When you monetized the nutrition of a baby, it became corrupted. 14% of US adults are employed in the healthcare industry. This is also why so many people are going in there, but not with good intentions, but to make money, because that's where you make money. Not to say lately I've been watching a lot of doctor and nurse TikTok or like these shorts. And before, people would go into this industry because they wanted to help people. But now it's about making money because it's the third largest industry in the United States. It says the average American couple needs $315,000 for medical expenses during their retirement. 43.3 Americans are inadequately insured. And even though it makes 43.3 trillion in revenue, America ranks 35 in the healthiest countries in the world. Houseway, how? Houseway, how? You don't got the answers. Houseway, how? As of 2020, 1/3 of US adults had a telehealth visit for themselves. These are just overviewing facts. Yeah, that's curious. Third largest industry. These are the sectors: health insurance, healthcare marketing, pharmaceuticals, health tech, and health administration. While expansion is positive, it's essential to note that the healthcare is growing as a share of the economy and government budgets in ways that appear unsustainable. 18 billion in pharmaceuticals and distribution. 18 billion. I was doing an assignment for class to see how much Americans are addicted to prescribed pharmaceuticals. IT 27.9 billion. 169 billion in pharma, 72 billion in medtech, 197 billion in providers. Yet America is still 35 on the world stage. Make it make sense. So I wanted to just put that there because I think it goes in line with largest companies by revenue: CVS, United Health Group, McKesson Corp, Amerisurf Bergen, Cardinal Health, Cigna, and the list goes on. This is huge money. So if money, remember, this is why I advocate for health advocacy, health education, because if money, I'm about to look it up. If money is the motivating factor, then you have to do your own due diligence. If money is the motivating factor, you, the individual, the family, the mother, the father, the collective are responsible for doing your due diligence because there is a conflict of interest. It's like we just read about the early study of formula being equivalent to breast milk. And because the company who commissioned the research also benefited, what did we just read? It's a conflict of interest. Anytime you're reading these research papers, it goes to the bottom and talks about funding. It has to talk about, is there any conflict of interest in this reporting? Who commissioned you? Is this an independent report, or is this report going to help the cause or case of someone else? Because if it does, you have to do your due diligence. I've been advocating for people in health spaces for as long as I can remember, because the reality is when finances and your health are involved, you have to know. And I had a doctor tell me this, and nobody come. I had a doctor, pediatrician, after I had to go, you know what I mean? I had to do my due diligence. You understand? And so I had to go back and forth with this doctor about my son many moons ago. And she was trying to do what doctors do. You understand? I'll tell the story real quick. So as you could tell, I'm an advocate for breastfeeding where it is possible. So at the time, I have twins and they were preemie. So therefore, I think I've told the story before, but it's appropriate because we're having this conversation. But I'm also an advocate, as you see, for education in all spaces and for people to be empowered when they go into spaces so that you are not manipulated and confused when they're trying to make you afraid. I'm not saying be ignorant and not, they went to school, but the reality is you have to make sure that you're in capable hands. Long story short, I understood that the growth curve for a breastfed is different from a formula fed, in addition to a full-term baby versus a preemie. So what happens is you get exploited for your lack of understanding, your ignorance. Okay. And so I had some concerns. I went into for the wellness visit, and she tried to convince me that my son needed, you ready for this? My son needed, he wasn't on the growth. He was beneath the growth curve, and that he was probably going to need, to go to the endocrinologist, and that he was probably going to need synthetic growth hormones, like all of this madness. Imagine you talking to a young mother, right, who is concerned about their child, and you're throwing all of these other medical things at them. He wasn't 2 yet. And I'm like, whoa, pump your brakes. Write down all of the concerns you have for me there, and write down your suggestions, and I'm going to do my own research. This was before, all of the beautifulness that exists right now, that you can you're going to have to do a little more digging. Long story short, I went and did my research. I read and did my research. This is why I advocate for advocating for yourself. And I went back in and had a few more conversations with her. And I said to her, you know what? Let me go to a naturopath and let me get their opinion. I went and got their opinion as well. I said, let me get a second opinion. You're entitled to a second opinion. I researched about the endocrinologists, the synthetic pig, by the way, pig hormones that they're using, the long-term effects of getting artificial growth hormones, right? And a few other things. Ultimately, I asked her, can I see the growth chart by which you're measuring him? And I think I told this story before. Lo and behold, as they like to say, lo and behold, when you look all the way down at the growth chart, right? All the way down. I think I'm going to pull one up for you because if you're a mother or a father and you have frequented the doctor's office, you're going to find a growth chart and they're going to look at the growth chart and they're going to tell you your child is over or your child is under or whatever the case may be. I'm trying to pull this growth chart up. And they have one for boys and they have one for girls, right? Hold on one second. Hold on, I'm looking for this growth chart. If I can't find it. And some people knew this. No one came and told me, hey, what are you planning on doing? Because, based on such and such, you can expect this versus expect that, right? I didn't have that. Maybe you did, but I did not. Okay, I can't find, there's a lot of growth charts up here right now. Right now, these growth charts are by the CDC. But when I looked at the particular growth chart that she was using, I'm trying to look for it. When I looked at the particular growth chart that she was using, guess who provide that growth chart? Can anybody guess? Anybody want to guess who was the creator of the growth chart? All the way down at the bottom, Gerber. The same Gerber we just read about. So what is this growth chart based on? Deductive reasoning. It's based on formula fed babies. So when I brought that to her attention, it was like, oh, because remember, the doctors, a lot of them are just, as she stated, and this is why I brought up the story, she said to me, I am just CYA, right? That's what the doctor said to me. She was CYA. She was covering her behind. And I said to her, me too. Me too. Okay? Me too. So when it comes to your health, when it comes to your children's health, when it comes to the health of your family and your loved ones, CYA. Now, if it's an emergency and there's some emergency situation, America all day, they have some emergency medicine. But as it relates to something that you may be doing inadvertently, something that is persistent because of an action or a behavior, find out what you're doing or what they say is the solution and do some research to ensure that you ask the right and appropriate questions. Because when you do not, there's a lot of people who were misdiagnosed. Now, long story short, I didn't listen to what she was saying. I did not put my child on synthetic pig related growth hormones. He's almost as tall as me today. You understand what I'm saying? And he needed to catch up because he was a twin. That's number one. And he is a twin. And he was also preemie. Okay. So you have to do all things considered and not allow yourself to, I don't say be ignorant and just put yourself at danger. But what I'm saying is that because there is a conflict of interest at times and over the course of even the last century, blindly putting your faith and trust without getting a second opinion, without exploring the information, especially in this time. Maybe back then when you didn't have access, that's number one. But especially during this time, be mindful, be aware, because the people have to live with the consequences of their action, not necessarily the doctor. The doctor is go on, live their life. You were a patient, they saw, maybe they think about you every now and then, and life goes on. But you have to live with it, right? And that's what one of my doctors, I said, hey, let me ask you something. When you volunteered for me to get a C-section, are you going to come and take care of me? Are you going to come and meet my needs? Because this is surgery. Yes, no? They wanted to kick me out the office, but hey, it is surgery. So don't minimize the reality of what somebody else may be experiencing, because to you, the person is just a number. Now, India is curious, and so am I, the number one industry. And then I'm going to go ahead and boogie. So this was a health spot of industry in America. It is said. Let's see here. I have to get. It is saying, and I have to cross-reference here. What is this? This is 2019. This is kind of old. So let me see something else. Okay, this is 2024. So the other one I saw was 2023. So let me just show you this real quick, and then I'm a boogie. I put the link in the box if anybody has anything to say. If not, then you don't know already. Give thanks for tuning in, and each one teach one. Each one teach one. So that's the link there. Let me know if any of this was valuable. So as per India, here it is. This is the updated one. So that was 2023. It said the third largest was healthcare. Biggest industry by revenue in US in 2024. So this is current. Based on expert analysis and our database of 1,300 US industry, IBS World presents, it's like a movie, a list of the biggest industries by revenue in the US in 2024. And already, anybody would like to guess? Somebody guess. Make it fun now. Make a guess. The biggest in the US. We can unlock this. India says it's valuable. Pass it on. And breastfeeding, it requires support too. You know what I mean? Support the young mother, support the child, support the process. You know what I mean? Some people quit because it is stigmatized in certain communities, and they get dirty looks and they get snide remarks, and the baby's not eating enough, or the baby's hungry, or the baby had dried on your titty, or all of these things that may deter a young mother from breastfeeding her child. So definitely, the more we educate ourselves, the more we can support one another. You understand? So definitely, war machines of some type. All right, mega read now. It says the biggest industry. Wait, I share. Good. The biggest industry by revenue is number one, commercial banking. Backside. That means all of the interest, all of the overdraft fees, all of the basically interest and overdraft fees that they make on taking people money and lending back out. It is said commercial banking revenue at $1.359.7 billion. The next one, hospitals. So Medicare. So now it went from, according to IBS World, it went from, and it's not far behind commercial banking. Commercial is at 1.359. Hospitals is at $1.331 billion industry with a B. Drug and cosmetic toiletry in wholesaling in the United States. So really, I was right in the sense of, if you put hospitals, drug, cosmetic toiletry, and health and medical insurance all together, then yes, healthcare, and then pharmaceuticals wholesaling in the United States, then I was correct. I know I wasn't bugging. You see why you got a cross-reference on the internet? Let me add that all up. 1.2 1.96 for pharmaceutical, 1.3328 for health and medical insurance, 1.331 for drug, cosmetic, and toiletry, and 1.331. So basically, according to this, the second, third, fourth, and fifth are all Medicare industry related. And that is at $5.29 billion industry. So it is the number one industry in America. After that, you have new cars dealership, you have life insurance. According to them, you have public schools. So who knew that public schools was a $982 billion industry? I'm trying to figure out where they got this list done because, if it is, who's the product? Who's the product? I'm gonna come back and talk about a TikToker that went viral for being 30, having graduated and wasn't able to read, and how many of the students now are graduating high school and reading at a 6th to 8th grade level. I said I was going to come back and talk about that and why I think it's so important to read, why I read so much on this channel, and why I promote reading and literacy on this channel so much, right? So, yeah, so there it goes. There it goes, according to IBIS. Hopefully that also was helpful, a little talking point as we go forward, right? So, with that said, yep, number 2, 3, and 4. With that said, don't forget to subscribe. You know what I mean? And like the video and share your thoughts in the comment section below. So everybody, I want to thank you for tuning in. Everybody have a blessed day. I'm about to go do my homework. And we will talk again and pick up more on Priscilla's conversation on the other side. Okay? On the other side of the week. All right? Everybody have a blessed night or day, wherever you may be.